So to discuss the president's speech, in the studio now we have the presidential spokesman, Alhaji Alpha Kanu. Good morning, Alpha Khan. Thanks for joining me in the program.
Good morning, Vivian.
Quite a lot was said yesterday by President Bio on an international platform. The question many have been asking is, how do the things that he spoke about internationally reflect back home?
Thank you very much. I'm glad you asked about the reflection back home. Let us go back to history. He spoke about UNAMSL and the efforts of the UN to bring peace into this country. He spoke about UNAMSL being the largest UN force anywhere at the time that was in Sierra Leone, to help bring peace to Sierra Leone. He spoke about how when the UN works, when the UN works,
sorry, I'll just...
lives are saved. And when it doesn't work, lives are lost. We know that. Thank you very much.
It's okay.
We know that here in Sierra Leone, that when the UN works, lives are saved. They saved us. So it's so very important that in our own context, Sierra Leone is a beneficiary of a working UN. Of a working UN. So most of the things he said, really, one, is to commend the international community for the work they had been doing in the past to settle problems in Sierra Leone, to settle problems in the world. He talked about the other issues that also affected Sierra Leone. The fact that ECOWAS did intervene here also before the UN and alongside the UN when we had our problems. These are all international interventions that helped us. So he was there, one, to commend them and to remind them the UN has a strength. It's a strength when they work together and they work in unison, the UN can make a difference. Then he referred to today what is happening is that the UN is working, but maybe not as effectively, because Gaza, he mentioned, there are still a lot of people being killed there. Ukraine is another area where a lot of people are dying. And Sudan, and the UN is here. The UN must have teeth. The UN must be able to do what they did in the past to make nations like Sierra Leone actually go back to peace, exchange the blue helmets for the ballot box.
He spent time talking about some of those other countries and their own issues they're currently dealing with. Most of these conflicts started with verbal conflicts before it got violent to this point.
Yes.
It seems hypocritical to some people that President Bio took time out to mention some of those countries, but not mention Sierra Leone and Guinea over Yenga. When you look at, again, those other countries, their issues started from verbal disputes. Because much was not done, it escalated. How do you fight for others when you have your own situation back home and it looks like a missed opportunity to bring the Yenga situation at such a platform, especially considering that the Guinean side is under a military administration that very recently denied the African body an opportunity for a visit there? Sounds like a missed opportunity, focusing on other people's issues, leaving your own issues at home.
In international disputes, there are several levels of redress. What is necessary at this level, we have done it. Sierra Leone has taken the matters to the MRU, the most immediate regional body to which Guinea and Sierra Leone belong. We have taken it to ECOWAS also. They are being, matter is being considered. You cannot leave those bodies and then go straight to the international body without you having a conclusion on that. So it will be a travesty. So we are following the process of redress. Mano River Union, the next level is ECOWAS.
Do they seem powerful enough to intercede?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. It is when they fail that you go to the African Union. If African Union fails, then you go to the UN. It's level of redress. Within Guinea and us, the matter is not that bad yet for us to start taking it to international
You say
level.
this as you're seated in Freetown, but for the people who live in Yenga, who have to constantly live in fear of the uncertainty, their own assessment of the situation would not be as you have assessed it.
No, that is why we are leaders. We have to follow procedure. What you don't want to do is to escalate the situation. If we start taking it beyond manageable proportions at the moment, then you can escalate it. So there are levels of redress, which are stated. First, it was interaction between us.
For 20 years plus.
Well, so it shows that there are still levels of redress open. For 20 years plus, we never went to ECOWAS for it. It is now that we went to ECOWAS. But before, we were trying to manage within the Mano River Union and between the relationship between us and Guinea to try and resolve that. President Ernest Bai Koroma tried. President Ahmed Tijan Kaba tried. President Ernest Bai Koroma, who did get a communique which the former president declared that Yenga was for Sierra Leone. Now a young leader has come as a military man. It's a different situation altogether. I do know that there were times when that leader had given instructions for the soldiers at Yenga to withdraw, but at some point they did not withdraw, and I think it led to the removal of the head of the military at that time. So, but for now, we don't want to go into a situation where we will be asked, why didn't you go to that level first? So we are at the level of ECOWAS at the moment. From there, the next level is the AU. If the AU fails, then we go to the UN, and to the UN we go straight to the International Court of Justice for arbitration, in much the same way as Cameroon and Nigeria resolved the Bakassi Peninsula issue. We want to take it easy. We don't want war between us.
As easy as the government of Sierra Leone is taking this, with all the diplomacy approach used, again, it was sometime this month that a team wanted to do visit to that area. The Guinean side prevented them from stepping foot into that zone. We had the Office of National Security. We were having a conversation on this. The Guinean side refused, not just the Sierra Leonean team, but even the regional bodies, the African bodies that were supposed to visit, begin to make an assessment. They were prevented from entering into Yenga. So again, how is this diplomacy panning out? Because the conflicts that President Bio mentioned at UNGA, these are the countries, their conflict started with diplomatic approach and diplomacy failed. This is the consequence of the failed diplomacy.
Ours will not fail. And that is what exactly the people did. When they were prevented, they did not resist. They returned to follow diplomatic procedures. If they resisted, then we would have been talking about different things at the moment. You don't start a war when it is not necessary. You try all possible means at peaceful redress, and that is what we are doing.
Do you think it would have been premature for President Bio to mention Yenga situation during UNGA?
Yes, because he has already mentioned it. He has already taken it to the ECOWAS, and they have not ruled on it yet. It is when they ruled on it and they fail, that is the time you take it to the next level. It's like going to a court for redress. You start with the magistrate court. You're not happy, you go to the high court. You're not happy, you go to the appeal court, and then the Supreme Court. You don't take a case directly from magistrate level that is due to go to magistrate level. You go straight to the Supreme Court. The UN is the Supreme Court.
Let's look at the human capital development President Bio comfortably spoke about on that platform. Human capital development back home now in Sierra Leone is seriously threatened by the Kush pandemic. Almost every day on a weekly basis, you'll find corpses here and there linked to the Kush situation in the country, which we have not been able internally to sort of nail in the bud. And that is a serious threat to human capital development.
Thank you. The Kush issue and the general abuse of drugs is a global issue. It's not just peculiar to Sierra Leone. What Sierra Leone can do is advocacy. What Sierra Leone can do is to put up measures like setting up the emergency task force, which is working to try and reduce the incidence of kush. What Sierra Leone can do is to prevent the coming of the drugs into the country. What Sierra Leone can do is to sort out those people who are distributors, who are dealers, and deal with them. And that's what we are doing. But the point is that there are so many people who are involved in this.
What's the evidence to reflect that that's what Sierra Leone is currently doing, especially when you talk about those at the helm of this kush situation, those who are the drug lords in the kush situation? What's the evidence Sierra Leone can show that we are really tackling this?
It is the perception. When kush first arrived in Sierra Leone, I say, because it's foreign, it came from somewhere else, you could rampantly see drug-affected youth in almost every street where you went. It is not so rampant now. There are, yes, cases of intransigent ones, but the level of rampant abuse has reduced and is falling, and that is how you measure progress.
Statistic are you using to make
I'm
this
not using
submission
statistics, I said perception.
Because very
I am
recently,
not using statistics, I'm using perception.
So,
it's my own perception.
So that's your own perception. I challenge you to say that perception is inaccurate, given the realities in the country.
That is from your own point of view.
Not just my point of view. Very recently as well, the mayor of Freetown was making media engagements, and she spoke about the concerns of finding people who were dropping dead from time to time across the city.
The mayor of Freetown will speak that way. She's speaking from the position of an opposition leader.
So are you saying that statement is inaccurate?
No, I'm not saying it's inaccurate.
Are you unaware of the pictures and videos from time to time of people dropping dead in the streets because of kush? Are you unaware of it?
I am unaware of that.
You are unaware of it?
I am unaware of that. No, that is a fact. I haven't seen anybody just stand there and drop dead in the street. I haven't seen that. No. But I knew in the past.
Is it that you're not following the news?
I follow the news. That's why I'm sitting here.
To know what's going on in the country?
I follow in the news. That's what I'm
So
here
if you follow the news, how are you then unaware of the fact that there are people dying? They find corpses from time to time.
I am told that people do die.
Okay, so now you know.
I am told that people do die. But to say I see them dropping on the street, I don't see that. That's what I'm
so
telling
you're told, you get the information that people are dropping dead.
Madam, if you wanted to talk about kush, you should have invited the
No. It's still part of the...
No, you should have invited...
It's still part of human capital development that President Bio was talking about.
You should have invited the task force. You are taking it from the most negative point of view. When you want to talk about human capital development, look at the positives.
Which ones?
The increase in school enrollment. The increase in the success rate of public exams. The fact that you have over 3 million young people now registered in school, for which government is paying. You look at those things first, and then you tell me about the challenges. But you came straight to the challenges. You want to make that to a big issue to overshadow all the good things that are happening.
But even this that you've mentioned now as a good thing, the success level of the public exams, even that, those have been questioned as well. You may be aware of it or not, that even the ACC had some time ago the Scorpion Squad conducted a raid, and they found that there are teachers supporting pupils.
They are dealing with human
supporting
beings.
Pupils for examination malpractice. So how do we sit now and attribute those results to a success rate when the exams themselves, the conduct of the exams, have been questioned, pegged with examination malpractice?
One tree does not make a forest. The fact that a few teachers have been raided for exam malpractice does not mean that all teachers in Sierra Leone do that. These things happen elsewhere. But the fact that ACC is on top of it and trying to discourage it and trying to name and shame people, at least the effort shows that government is putting effort to ensure that that is controlled.
On the flip side,
you will never get people to follow the law 100%. Never. That is why we have police. That is why we have rules and regulations. Never. We are dealing with human beings. Every person is an individual. It is not like a mango You can say that this is a mango, so the next mango will taste the same, and all that kind of thing. No, every human being have their own idiosyncrasies. So it is the ability to be able to combine all of that and get an integrated whole to come out with a solution that is average for everybody that makes a good governance. So that is the problem we have. We cannot take individual cases like that and generalize. I am telling you that exam success is good. I tell you in 2022, you know that. I said that here, and you read that. 122,000 young people passed exams such that they gained matriculation for universities. It never happened before. It is because of the free education. It is because of the free school fees that the president is paying for children, the exam fees, and also the learning materials and the encouragement for teaching materials and all that kind of thing. This is how it is small. Rome was not built in a day. We started from rock bottom. We are now rising into the surface and want to climb the trees. So we take time to do that. That is why I say the human capital development has a lot of positives for which we should be proud of as Sierra Leoneans. And the fact that the president did put an emergency task force for the Kush and addressed it in a public meeting at Bintu Mani, it shows that he's concerned enough to ensure that this is controlled in this country.
President Bill also highlighted some of Sierra Leone's achievements in democracy, the rule of law, education, and the economy. What are those progress again? Because when you talk about the rule of law, democracy, there are bottlenecks here and there. When you talk about the economy, that's a whole challenge on its own. What are these progress made in rule of law, democracy, economy?
The progress. You take the total environment, you categorize it into one sentence, into one word, into an average, into a mean. And that mean is what? Peace. Sierra Leone is peaceful. Where there is no rule of law, there will be no peace. Where there is no democracy, there will be no peace. So for me, the fact that we are rated as the 57th most peaceful nation on earth, out of 190 almost 200 countries, that is a big thing. When you compare that to our neighbors, you know that we are making strides. You know that our democracy is working. Liberia next door, our closest neighbor, is at level 90. Guinea is at 120. And Nigeria, the biggest nation on the continent, is 147. We are 57. And we are the third most peaceful in West Africa. We are the fifth or the eighth most peaceful in the whole of the continent of Africa. We are doing very well. So those are the culmination of the rule of law, at least appreciable delivery on the rule of law, democracy, and of course, general tranquility and security. So that is what you use to measure that. So in that respect, yes, so I put that aside. And you talked about the economy. The economy. There's certain things you look at which tells you whether the economy is improving or not improving. Last year, around October, our inflation rate was about 56%. Now it's 7.6%. From the World Bank, not us. That's showing you that we are controlling the economy. The exchange rate of the dollar has remained stable for almost 1 year with very little fluctuation. That shows you that we are doing well as a government to stabilize the economy. And also the prices of commodities. The most talked about commodity in Sierra Leone has always been the rice, the one that goes into the port. About 6 months ago, it was almost 1 million leones for a bag of 50 kilograms of rice imported. Now it's 640. It's a drop of almost 35% within 3 months or 4 months or something like that. That is improvement. And what is doing that? It's because of the efforts that we are putting in agriculture, the efforts we are putting in our trade control, and all that sort of thing, that is improving that. Even WFP, who used to import about 90-something% of their food, as rice, that they distribute to schools for school feeding, now buy about 44% of that here in Sierra Leone locally, which means there's an increase in production, local production of rice. These things don't happen overnight. It takes time. And these are not figures that I am making. These are figures from international bodies. So if they tell you that, and I can feel it, because when I used to send to the market to buy me a bag of rice, I would have to send almost 1 million leones. Now if I give them 700 leones, they'll bring me back 60 leones. So that is a big drop, and it shows in my pocket, and I can feel it. So there are other things. So I can see that the economy is working, but there are so many things that make up the economy. The level of production, the level of activity and all that, the employment rate and all that sort of thing. But for Africa, and Sierra Leone in particular, we are not an industrialized country. We are agrarian, we're farmers, we are fishermen, we are what you call subsistence farmers and all that kind of thing. What we do out in the fields, we work on a daily basis, but it's hardly enough to keep body and soul together. You understand? So what we have to do is to improve on those. That is why the Ministry of Agriculture is improving on that by producing, by introducing mechanization, by introducing inputs, by introducing extension workers to help farmers to increase their productivity level.
We'll come back to the economy. Let's quickly go back to democracy and the rule of law quickly. So there's a State of Democracy in Sierra Leone 2025 report by the National Commission for Democracy and Partners. So in the summary, it says there's sort of an indictment here for the government. I'll read you an excerpt from it. In the category of political participation, it reads, in principle, the law provides protection and freedom to citizens to self-organize, form, and or belong to voluntary associations. The majority of respondents in the FGDs self-reported that they belong to some form of groups or associations, either religious, cultural, or otherwise. Now, in practical, however, the state has become increasingly interested in the activities of formal, professional, and social groupings such as the Sierra Leone Bar Association, Student and Trade Union, civil society groups, and other civic groups which can influence public opinion on politics and political life. The state and the two leading political parties which have interchangeably governed the country have sought to either co-opt them in support of a political party or the state, or shrink where co-optation is impossible, the space for civic groups to operate. This is an indictment to the government.
It isn't. It is an error. It is not the state.
How is this an error?
It is the political parties they're talking about. It is not the state that tries to interfere with that. It is the political party. Let us separate the political party activities from the state.
Let me read the line again. It says, however, the state has become increasingly interested in the activities of formal, professional, and social groupings such as the Sierra Leone Bar Association, student and trade unions, civil society groups, and other civic groups which can influence public opinion on politics and political life.
That is why I'm
clearly
telling
states
you.
the state.
That is why I'm telling you it's erroneous. Yes,
but you're saying
they made an error. Yes, it is not the state. The state is not interested in the Sierra Leone Bar Association. It is an organization of lawyers. They are independent. That report is erroneous.
This is by NCD, the National Commission for Democracy, and their partners.
It's erroneous. The state is not interested in the state, in the SLBA or civil society groups and things like that. No, that's why they're there. They have their own independent voice. They are what you call independent voices. The state is not interested in that. That's what I'm telling you. It's an erroneous statement.
So the current government is the SLPP-led government. The SLPP as a political party currently enjoys the services of a one time-renowned civil society activist who now serves as the mouthpiece for the Sierra Leone People's Party. Again, this is the SLPP-led government. How strongly now do you tell the public that this report is an error?
Every civil society organization member votes at the end of the day. When they vote, they have their preferred party they vote for. Maybe when Moses Mambu was a CSO member, he was voting for the SLPP. He's no longer. When he has resigned from that, he's become a politician, he has opted to join his party. So it is not the party that influenced him to come. He decided to come, and he did not influence the CSO organization to do that. Yes, he has a right to. They have a right to be. Even the National Electoral Commissioner, from Christian Atop down to Mohammed Kone, they vote. They just won't tell you where they vote. At the end of the day, they have a preferred party. But because of their jobs, they have to show the neutrality of all that. So if Moses Mambu was a civil society organization member before, and is no longer, and now decides to work for the SLPP, a party that he supports, a party whose ideals he is in tune with, I think it is his right to do that. That is freedom of expression, freedom of association, and that is why democracy works in Sierra Leone.
Would you disagree that there were some of the things President Bio made sort of exaggerating the progress made in Sierra Leone in democracy, rule of law, the economy?
He exaggerated? How? No, he did not. I will not agree with you. In fact, he didn't say enough. We're doing so well in Sierra Leone now with our economy. We're doing, judging from where we took it from. They are doing so well now with the democracy, judging from where we took it from. How can you say that he's not doing well with democracy? When a man who has won elections goes to parliament and says that because my opponents are not happy with the results, and I believe that when I was also contesting certain years back, I was not happy, and people before that were not also happy, it means there's something wrong with the laws that control our elections. Let us now set up a committee to look at that and see how we can improve it so that we obviate the necessity for us to be having contests at the end of results when they are announced. So that is democracy. That is showing the commitment of His Excellency, the President, into the democracy of the country. Yes, so what you are saying there is not correct.
President Bio has been criticized as well now by some people who strongly believe that it is hypocritical of us as a nation that the government in itself talks about fighting drugs issues in the country, but here we are. Jos Leijdekkers matter, the extradition is still treated like a pinch of salt. Not much attention paid to that at all, but we stand on a public platform to sort of convince the world that we stand firm in words and in actions for global peace, and we stand to fight against even drugs misuse and abuse globally.
Jos Leijdekkers, if that is his name, but the police tell us that the man whose photograph was shown to them is a man called Omar Sharif. But the Dutch say he's called Jos Leijdekkers. We don't know that. But the fact that that person, they say, is here, he did not fall from the sky into Sierra Leone. He came from somewhere. If it is Jos Leijdekkers, he left the Netherlands. He went to Belgium. They allowed him to leave. And then when he ends up looking like Jos Leijdekkers, this Omar Sharif, in this country, and they say it is Sierra Leone that has been responsible for that, I think that is unfair. Why and how do they, stronger than us, they are stronger than we are, let him go. So if he's here, and that person has not committed any crime yet in Sierra Leone, and they ask that he had committed crimes out there in their country, and there are laws that determine the procedures for extradition, which we are now following after having received communication from the Dutch Attorney General's office, exchanged with our own Attorney General. They are working on that now. they are following the procedures. So let us allow the police, one, to finish whatever investigation they are doing to ensure that it is Jos Leijdekkers or it is Omar Sharif or something like that that is here. And then after that, when the Attorney General receives the report, he will respond. And they are in communication on a daily basis. You request. The request is in the process of being answered. But it has to be answered fairly, justly, and equitably. And that is what's happening now.
Overall, what would you say the impact of President Bio's speech is on the global stage on behalf of Sierra Leone? Sorry,
what did you say?
On a whole, what would you say is the impact of President Bio's speech on a global stage on behalf of Sierra Leone?
The impact is that Sierra Leone has arrived at the international stage, and now we have a right to sit at the table, which we are sitting. We're in the UN Security Council. We raise certain issues which are pertinent to the African continent. We ask that the Ezulwini concessions, and the Sirte Declaration of the African states be respected, that Africa gets its own seat at the table where most of the things that are decided there, more than 50% of the decisions on that table affect Africa. We are a continent of 54 independent countries, a continent of 1.4 billion people, bigger than any other group in this world. China is 1.3 billion. India is also 1.3 billion. But the largest population, single group of population, is us. And we are not in the UN Security Council as Africa. But most of the things that are decided there is about Africa. That is why yesterday, when I listened to an interview by Mrs. Amina Mohammed, who is the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, say that the way Africa is being treated at the United Nations Security Council is when somebody is having his head shaved in his absence. They're talking about us, and they clip weird we know the day. Why shouldn't we be at the table?
And President Bio was pushing for equity, also requesting for Sierra Leone to, well, Africa generally, to have a permanent seat in the Security
That's what
Council.
we're pushing at. That is the Ezulwini concession.
But this call isn't new.
Yes.
What impact would President Bio's call have on making this become a reality?
Thank you very much. The impact is that, for the first time, that call was taken to the United Nations Security Council. Before, it was being talked about and discussed and debated in the plenary, the General Assembly. Now it went to the United Nations Security Council with President Bio chairing, and he brought it up. And after his statement, the United States permanent representative, Mrs. Linda Thomas, actually declared that the United States, USA, would support Africa for a seat in the United Nations. China, Russia followed suit, and all of the 5 permanent members. So that's the impact. It never got that far before. We've been at it for over nearly 20 years. It started with President Tijan Kabar, and then President Ernest Bai Koroma did what he could. But with President Bio, it has been escalated up to the United Nations Security Council to the point where those who had resisted accepting Africa into the United Nations Security Council have now accepted that it can be there. And on this 80th, President Bio is hoping that by the time we leave in the plenary, in the General Assembly, that will be accepted also. Once that is done, then you will say that the impact has been great.
All right, as we try to round off, let me read you some of the messages on our Facebook page. Mosdi says, as important and disturbing as the Yenga issue is to us as Sierra Leoneans, I don't think it would have been wise for President Bio to include this in his deliberations at the UN. Guinea is our closest neighbor and a sister country. This is an African, specifically a West African issue, and at the moment, the ECOWAS is currently involved in helping to find a positive outcome to this issue. Ike Dalton says the economy is in dire state, flatlining with the highest inflation, exchange rate with no growth, employment, productivity with businesses closing down due to lack of trade and poor transportation infrastructure services. Stop it. Levi Tobias says, waste of time every time Alpha Khan has to sit down for an interview. Compson just can't stop the lies even when... Okay, this message isn't really very clear. Mark 10 New Englandville says, Mr. Khan, official records reveal that as of 13th August 2025, Council had collected 142 corpses from the city's streets, comprising 136 males and 6 females. In less than a month, between 13th August and 11th September, an additional 32 bodies were recorded, 31 male and 1 female. The vast majority of the deceased are young people, a trend the mayor described as deeply troubling. Alhaji Imran says, Alpha Kanu, please go to Waterloo dumping site and see youths eating there. Mosdi says, so basically what Mr. Khan is telling us is that the Netherlands don't have the moral grounds to lecture us about drug lords or drug barons because the Netherlands themselves are well known as a country that is not clean when talking about illicit drugs. Your response to these messages?
I'll answer to the person who talked about the inflation. That person is not current. The current inflation rate as of last month is 7.6%. as opposed to 56% last year, October. That's a big difference. Over 50%, nearly 50 percentage points reduction. The other person who talks about the kush and the dead people who are happening, I am not contesting the number. I am saying that it is wrong if we did not make an effort. We are making an effort to reduce that incidence, and we are doing that as a country. So this is my reply. The economy itself is doing well. If anybody wants to deny that, tell me where you are buying a bag of rice today for 1 million leons. Just tell me. You only need one proof to disprove a fallacy. So whatever that person is saying is fallacious. Thank you.
Is that the only message you'll choose to
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Remind me for the others, please.
The other person was giving a statistic on the corpses found.
That's the second one I dealt with.
And
that's the second one I dealt with. It is the fact that we have making effort to reduce that. We're making effort to reduce that. You can take a horse to the river. You can't force that horse to drink. We are making messaging. We are advocating with youths. The NPHA is doing well. The Ministry of Social Welfare has opened a treatment center. We are treating young people. We are rehabilitating young people. We are giving them, when they grow out of that rehabilitation center, we are giving them means to start their lives all over again. We are doing the effort. We are working hard at the entry point, the airport and the Ports Authority to ensure, and the border points, to ensure that we reduce the amount coming into the country. There is a situation where, about a month or two ago, a whole container shipped from Southampton in England came here with kush-making material. So they allow these things to come. They can stop them in their place there. They come here and now they want to throw the dirt at us. No, they have that problem. We also have a problem here. We're trying to solve that problem. So it's a global issue that we must collaborate and cooperate together. We mustn't leave it and throw it at the weak nations and say they are allowing this. No. If they did not produce the drugs, they wouldn't be here.
So you agree with the person who summarized your submission to say sort of you're challenging the moral grounds on which the Netherlands would stand to demand Sierra Leone to take action on Jos Leijdekkers?
Well, I would not go as far as that. I am saying they have a drug problem, in as much as we have a drug problem. I am sure they are also doing what they can to reduce that. So I cannot say that they don't have the moral grounds. If they don't have the moral ground, they wouldn't be fighting it. If they didn't have the moral ground, they wouldn't be chasing somebody they think is in our country that escaped from their own custody. No, I am not saying that.
What does President Bio's appointment as an eminent person for G7 Plus mean for Sierra Leone?
It means a lot. It means that the image of Sierra Leone has been cleansed, and it's been cleansed all the time. It means Sierra Leone now can sit at the table. It means we are now accepted in all spheres of life. The G7 Plus is actually the whole of the world minus 7 countries, the 7 most industrialized nations of the UK, the United States, China, France, and Russia, and all that. Those are the G7. You take them out. The rest of the world is saying President Bio is an eminent person, and he is even the chairman of that organization. So you see that the image of the country is going far. He's also the chairman of the C10, which is also trying, by the end of this 80th session in the UN, I hope there will be a strong statement declaring that Africa can have and will have its own seat at the table. And also, he is the chairman of ECOWAS. So it means that the country's image is been acceptable for us to be at the table.
Thank you very much, Alhaji Alpha Kanu, for being a part of Wake Up Sierra Leone this morning.
Thank you very much.